Hi, I'm Shuri Ba. Welcome to the second webinar of the Business Continuity and Recovery webinar series. Esri's business team is hosting this series to share resources and workflows that can help your organization leverage location intelligence to overcome the unprecedented business challenges experienced during COVID-19. We hope you'll join us for the next 3 webinars as well. Assess workforce capacity and facility readiness is being recorded and will be made available to you to watch again and share with colleagues. We will make the recording available within a few hours following this webinar. As time permits, we will answer questions at the end of the webinar. Please enter your questions in the question dialog box, and you can enter questions at any time during the webinar. We have many resources to share with you today. For later reference, we've uploaded a PDF document located in the console of this session under handouts for you to download. This document includes links to the materials and resources that will be covered in the webinar shortly. Joining me today is Alex Martinek, Industry Solutions Specialist for Risk Management, and Russell Sands, Senior Solution Engineer for Insurance and Risk Management. Today's agenda is packed, so let's get started. Allow me to introduce you to my colleague, Alex Martinek.
Well, thank you, Cherie, and hello to all of you, whether you are watching us live or viewing the recording. These are certainly trying times, and I want to wish you and your loved ones the very best as we continue to face the challenges of this COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're going to be talking about how customer-facing organizations, whether they are government agencies providing civil services and utilities, or businesses in the private sector, can understand the impact of a crisis or disaster and assess the status, capacity, and readiness of their workforces and facilities alike. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment to share how we at Ezri view an increasingly important topic: business continuity and recovery. For several decades, Ezri has empowered the mission of our users in emergency response, law enforcement, uniformed services, and corporate risk management. And throughout that time, we've identified these common patterns that have emerged to define what it means to be a resilient organization. First of all, understanding the capacity and the well-being of your workforce to ensure you are providing proper safeguards and maximizing availability. Second, and complementary to that, is having visibility into the readiness of your facilities during a crisis to quickly allocate resources, including your workforce, to respond to immediate market and customer demands. Next, knowing how an event can affect your supply chain from production to fulfillment, and measuring the downstream ramifications so you can proactively mitigate and minimize disruptions. And lastly, you can be 100% right about what policies to implement or actions to take, but without clear and effective channels for communicating with both internal and external stakeholders, you cannot be resilient. So ensuring you have a centralized hub for sharing actionable insights means the difference between success and failure. We've developed these areas of focus to be deployed either independently or in an interconnected ecosystem based on the needs of our users and their objectives. And you may see a pattern with these, and I want to be very clear that true resilience is not avoiding an adverse event, rather being able to absorb the impact and continue to fulfill on strategic operations. Today, our objective is to help you understand how you can not only survive crises like the current COVID-19 pandemic, but thrive in periods of increasing volatility. And this is nothing new. Today, the crisis is the virus, but for the past 10 years, we've seen a clear pattern of increasingly costly and disruptive events from natural disasters, human conflict, political and economic distress. And what we're talking about today has applicability to it all. No one could have properly forecasted how widespread the impact of COVID-19 was going to be on our society. It's truly unprecedented in our modern history to see this kind of a disruption occur so rapidly. I mean, it seems like nearly overnight, entire countries shut down, and even the best prepared organizations have felt the sting. We've seen atypical spikes in consumer behavior and a complete shift in how most consumers shop for and receive goods, almost entirely relying on direct-to-consumer models. If you're like Russell and I, you're participating today either in a home office setup, or if you're in an office setting, I'm willing to bet that it feels a lot different than it did back in January. Supply chains have been strained, fractured, or in a few isolated cases, outright destroyed because of these surge demands. And Lastly, many services who have personnel in the field have had to provide greater levels of safety for both their workforces and their customers alike to curb the spread of the virus. To complicate matters further, we're likely to see periodic shutdowns on individual community levels or even at individual business sites occur for quite a while until there are more preventative measures that have been implemented on a global scale. And I want to say that today we are all in the same situation where it's difficult to know what questions we even need to be asking to guide our policy. But the simple takeaway from what we've learned so far is that organizations that do not have the ability to, one, holistically understand how to keep their operational readiness and their workforces and facilities operational to meet these challenges, they will be the hardest hit by this and any future disruption. So I want to talk to you secondly about minimizing. When we talk about minimizing the impact of any crisis, it's about understanding the facets of your business model that are within your control. You cannot change this situation, but you can certainly control the way you react. Maintaining operational integrity relies on keeping abreast of your workforce's capacity and the readiness of all of your business sites. We're going to show you how understanding the status of your workforce is more than just finding out where people are located during a crisis. First, understanding the well-being of your teams can help you proactively implement those safeguards to isolate and reduce the spread of the virus. Secondly, if you understand where your staff are located by job function or specialty, if needed, you can quickly reassign them to areas of increased demand or any type of situation that requires additional assistance. Many organizations have struggled in the early days of the pandemic to identify which sites were impacted by public health restrictions or additional shutdowns. And we are going to continually see isolated hotspots for a while. And so the ability to measure the readiness and capacity of all of your sites from the national level down to communities and even individual locations will help you minimize the downtime between discovery of an issue and decision making, which is going to be a key theme for this webinar today. Last, in times like these, the best course of action is to leverage tools and methodologies that will empower your organization to reduce that time of discovery to decision, so you can satisfy remaining market opportunities while strategically planning for what future demands may look like. And again, how we know this is that we've been working with organizations for decades on hyperlocal disasters, isolated incidents, and this has been true from virtually every type of disaster we have faced in the past. So in a moment, my colleague Russell is going to walk you through how we help our users make these crucial decisions when the stakes are high. All of this rests on having a solid foundation on location intelligence to create what we call a single pane of glass approach. The ability to see what's going on, where you are at risk, and to help with implementing what needs to be done. Crucial to this agility is streamlining data collection and processing to become important tools for decision support in near real time. And again, insights from the field are of no help to anyone in your organization if they're just stuck on a clipboard somewhere. Also, we need to start getting creative and reshaping the discussion on what constitutes an authoritative source of information. In my experience, yes, you can harvest a lot of valuable information from a mobile device to guide your analysis, but having contextual insights from your employees or your customers is invaluable. So start to reshape your thinking about those sources and treat them like the valuable sensors that they are. Lastly, data. I cannot stress this enough, the value of having the right data that is analyzed in the proper way to make those decisions, seeking clarity over simplicity. One great example of all of this in motion from COVID-19 comes from one of our users at Central Arkansas Water. With nearly 500,000 customers relying on them to provide safe drinking water, their mission is critical to over 125,000 individual business and residential accounts. Leveraging the tools that you're about to see, they quickly stood up a decision support environment to monitor their field workforce, assess their operational readiness by facility, and push out key updates to their customers and support them in their greatest time of need. In crises like this, communication is key to ensure that everyone is on the same page. Before we jump into that, I want to take a moment to share before we jump into that, I just want to share these 4 steps on what you're about to see. First is the ability to leverage mobile surveys on any device, anywhere, as they're in the field, to, again, streamline that processing, that collection to processing approach. This enables you to monitor that readiness in near real time from individual employees to individual facilities, all the way up to the portfolio level. Being able to deploy web-based dashboards and applications to share those insights as quickly as possible. And lastly, the ability to investigate potential contact events or exposures to help guide your policies proactively. So Russell, let's show them what we have to show today.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. What we'll be looking at today is, as Alex pointed out, an illustration of Esri's business continuity solution. This is a solution that you can actually get from our ArcGIS solutions page, and we'll show where to get that at the end. But I want to talk about what we're going to see right now. I'm going to walk you through the process of using the elements that are included in the solution, how to gather information about the status of your personnel and facilities, and how you can monitor that. Afterwards, we'll talk about how we can use these information products in the context of some specific decisions or questions that we might be asking. And like I said, we'll end by looking at where we can go to get started. Now, as Alex was mentioning, we might be dealing with a pandemic today, but responding to crises is something that organizations have had to do for a long time. Using a dashboard like the one we're looking at now is one way that I can do that. Here we can see information about the current status of our personnel. This is being updated as my staff provide me with regular form-based information. Some of this is probably very generally useful, whether this is a pandemic or a hurricane, earthquake, flood. Information about where people are they at their normal work location, working from home, working off-site, or even potentially absent, is going to be relevant in any kind of event that might be high impact to our business. We can also configure this to ask questions that are specific to the event we're dealing with now, or an event we're dealing with in the future. In this case, we're asking questions about symptoms related to COVID-19 and whether individuals are living in a household with someone who also has symptoms. It's important, I should probably stop actually right here and just mention quickly that this is sample data that we're looking at right now. And as you go to implement this at your organization, you're going to want to make sure that you're engaged with your human resources team so that you can collect only the information that is responsible to be collected and in compliance with your corporate policies on how to handle that data. Let's look at how we actually get this information. As Alex mentioned, we can use readily configurable forms to collect it. Here, I'm able to update my employer about my current work status. Am I working today or not? If I am able to work, where am I working from? Is it my normal work location? Am I temporarily working from home? Or am I at another potentially off-site location working? And as I said, these two questions are probably the kinds of things you would want to know about your personnel under any circumstance. The next series of questions are things that we can configure to be responsive to COVID-19. But it's probably worth thinking about how we might configure them for other kinds of events. With the pandemic, where we're worried about something transmitting from one person to the next, we might be particularly concerned whether or not our staff are expected to have close contact with anyone else. If we have a question where they say yes, you can see that we can have dependent questions to let us collect that information. We can also ask questions, optionally, about whether or not these staff are currently experiencing any COVID-19 related symptoms or are living in a household where someone has symptoms. As individuals complete this form, we're able to track that information through time. I just submitted that form, which enables me to track the history. And this is a pretty important way of understanding the data because we're making decisions at points in time, and those decisions impact our staff. And the way that our staff react to the choices we've made guides the decisions we make in the future. Having a single place where we can go to see information, both for the current day and historically for the status of my workforce, is one way I can understand how successful the actions I'm taking are. We could also use the filters along the left-hand side of this dashboard to drill into a particular office, team, or filter for a particular date range. All of this is really important information, and we've configured it to ask questions that are relevant to the current event. For a flood, I might have asked slightly different questions, like whether someone's vehicle is still working or was it flooded, that would get at why they may or may not be able to return to work. But really, it's important to also recognize that organizations don't just have people, they also have facilities. These facilities could be any assets that you have. Many organizations have offices where they have a either owned or leased building that they might want to know whether it is open or closed. Others might have retail locations, and these could be non-traditional facilities as well. Think about all of the data centers that are out there, supply depots, warehouses, other nodes in a supply network. With a dashboard, I'm able to quickly understand what the status of all of those facilities are. So I can see that I have 16 facilities that are reporting, 3 that have reported that they are closed, and an additional 1 that is scheduled to close. Encouragingly, I actually have 2 locations that are scheduled to open again. Just like we could do with our personnel, we've made it really simple to collect this information, to really streamline the process of getting the data about our facilities. We can use, again, a form to allow the administrator for the Baton Rouge facility to indicate that their facility is open for business. We could allow them to capture some additional information about their expectations for the workforce in the office. For example, again, how many are present, how many are expected to work remote, and how many might be absent. Here again, we have a number of questions that are pre-configured, illustrating the kinds of things you may want to collect about your facilities. That said, you could always hide these fields, hide these questions, or collect different information. One thing that's particularly useful in this form is that we're asking for information about whether or not there are any government restrictions in place. And as Alex mentioned, this is something that a lot of organizations I've talked to over the past several months have struggled with. This is because with COVID-19, we've seen a lot of different levels of information out there: local, state, province, national level restrictions. Allowing an administrator who might be more familiar with the local restrictions to feed that information back to me completes my picture and my understanding of what is happening at my facilities. Just like I could with the personnel status form, as this form is submitted, I'm able to return to the dashboard and see the history of all of this impact. Here we can see the trend through time in the closed or impacted facilities, those that are scheduled to close or scheduled to open, as well as staffing information. Again, this is particularly important in the context of both continuing to operate during a pandemic and preparing to return to the workforce. We might make a decision at a point in time, but there are going to be situations that will unfold on the ground, which we might need to respond to, and which might impact the reality of opening up a particular location or a particular area. This has been, so far, a high-level review of the components of this solution and how they work. Kind of a little bit mechanical. But how about the kinds of questions we could answer here? One thing that I think is going to be really important as organizations start to reopen offices is understanding the safety of both their personnel and the facility. Let's imagine that our office, the Baton Rouge office, which we just submitted a report for, is in a state that is allowing businesses to open. So we've just said that that facility is open. How can we understand what's actually happening on the ground? On the personnel status dashboard, I can actually come in here and filter this down to be just the Baton Rouge office. And here I can observe something interesting. While this office is indicated as open, something appears to be happening. And that's because I only have 2 people who are reporting to me that they're coming into the office. The vast majority of my staff, 43 of them, are working from home, and we have a few others who are working at other locations or potentially absent. That alone might be something that I need to pay attention to and start asking why that is. Perhaps reach out to the administrator. Another thing I can see here is that 3 forms have been submitted. 3 of my personnel have let me know over the course of this event that they have symptoms that are associated with COVID-19. There's a lot here that I could do to drill into that in more detail. For example, I could use the date range filters to see if any of those individuals who are reporting symptoms have submitted that information to me recently. I could also use some of the other filters here, like whether they're working with others or whether they have a form with symptoms, to kind of drill in more detail. But what all of this is really helping me understand is whether this person who's reporting to me that they have symptoms contracted or started presenting those symptoms 10 weeks ago or 10 hours ago. And there's a huge difference in terms of the impact to what I can do at this Baton Rouge facility, depending on the timing. Let's imagine, though, that these forms came in recently. This is something that's happened since I've opened, and it's within 24 hours. I really need to take an action. The first thing I'm probably going to want to do is communicate to the rest of the organization that we're going to close the office in Baton Rouge. To do that, I can use the location tab of this dashboard, where I can see information about all of my offices. In this case, they're color-coded by what their status is. So my red facilities are closed, the blue ones have been marked as impacted, and these green ones are the open offices. You can see here that I just submitted this form, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this facility. Here I have all of the information that's being collected and the ability to update it. By accessing the status report from the pop-up, I can quickly indicate that this facility is going to be closed. Now, we might take a whole host of additional actions, like considerations around cleaning and additional measures we might put in place to make staff more comfortable returning to the office. But while it's closed, there certainly should not be anyone present. As I submit this information, it will update the data on my map. And this information is available in other information products and other parts of my ways that I'm communicating the data to my organization. Hopefully you've seen the power of how these information products can work together. And I think that kind of leads to the natural question of how do I get started? And the great thing is that, if you want to go down the path that Central Arkansas Water has gone down, you can get started pretty quickly. We've made this solution available as a template that's downloadable from the ArcGIS Solutions page that will get you started. It's going to build out all of the component information products, the forms, and there's a few steps that you'll have to do to finish the configuration. But it's a great way to get started, and over 700 organizations have taken that path. And I think it's important as we wrap up the demonstration component to think about a few things. And one of those is that this is really the starting point. Having the template and getting started is something you probably want to have in your back pocket. It's a really good thing to put into your playbook for not just how you would respond to a pandemic, but how you'll respond to the next event that happens. It's also important to realize that while we have these really powerful pre-configured templates, nothing stops you from reconfiguring them to ask additional information or ask less information, or from using them as inspiration to help you understand how they work and to develop your own solution using the same technology. So far, we've done a good high-level conversation of what the components of this solution are, how we can answer specific questions, and where we can go to get started. I'm going to turn it back to Alex now, who's going to talk us through a couple of ways that we've seen users really take this to the next level. Alex?
Before we end today, and as we recap on these 4 points, I want to take a moment to share how some of our users have been engaging with emerging trends with their COVID-19 monitoring, their mitigation efforts, and things that have been rising in popularity with the with this narrative since the crisis first emerged. And of course, any discussion on these innovative approaches needs to include some time on using proximity analysis to identify potential contact events between infected and uninfected persons. And there are several complexities and nuances involved with conducting this level of analysis for your workforce, but the benefits can truly aid in decreasing that time between discovery and action, so you can take the necessary precautions within your workplace, shared assets like vehicles, or other high-risk areas that can truly make a difference. As you can see by this GIF, when we discuss proximity analysis, the main focus is utilizing the sensors and mobile devices to create an audit trail of workforce interactions to uncover where individuals came within close proximity to each other during their normal activities. If an individual later reports that they tested positive, this analysis provides some insights into who else may be at risk based on defined rules on how close they were, how long was the duration of that interaction, and at what point in the infected individual's potential timeline did this interaction take place. However, with the caveat, proximity analysis can vary drastically based on the size of your organization, the scale of the deployment, also whether the analysis is being conducted outside versus indoors, and if it did occur on multiple levels. In the attached handout that you'll see in the GoToWebinar dashboard, you'll find additional resources on proximity analysis. And if your organization wants to pursue this path, our implementation team can help identify areas where we can support. Lastly, we've been engaged with our user community who are customer facing, again, whether it is in the government space or in the private business space, who want to know how location intelligence can support safely reopening their facilities, following the recommendations of public health agencies, and also proactively implement safeguards like ensuring workspaces and common areas are reconfigured to maximize workforce engagement and productivity while ensuring proper distances are maintained. The ability to identify high-risk locations that need additional safeguards, whether it's barriers or potential signage on policies, anywhere where you could potentially prevent or minimize contact events from occurring in the first place. Also, understanding high-touch locations on a spatial and also temporal level to allocate sanitation efforts where and when they are most needed. All of this guides faster, more reliable response efforts to potential incidents. And again, it speeds that precious time from discovery to decision making. So similar to proximity analysis, we've included additional resources in the handout and are happy to discuss your organization's objectives. As Russell mentioned, we've had 700 downloads of our templates, and we have been working across the board with multiple organizations and almost every industry focus on these types of questions. With that, I want to thank you all for sharing this time with us today. I'm truly humbled to see the amazing work you have all done throughout this crisis and look forward to continuing on this great effort of getting our society back up and running safely and effectively. So for that, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Russell. Quick reminder, everyone, to please submit any questions that may have come up for you in today's presentation in the question dialog box. We won't have time to get to questions live today, but we will reach out one-on-one and we'll give you contact information in just a minute here for you to do that. So your questions will be answered. To learn more about business continuity and recovery resources and workflows available to your organization, please follow the link provided on this slide. It will take you to our business continuity and recovery overview page. Also, please take the time to review the next webinar in the series, Business Recovery by Market and Facility. To register for the webinar, please follow the link located on our Business Continuity and Recovery overview page. And again, we don't have time for Q&A today, but friendly reminder that this webinar has been recorded for you to watch again and share with colleagues on demand. Within just a few hours, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording. You'll also, in that email, will receive contact information via email that you can submit your questions to, and someone will be reaching out to you one-on-one. Also, please feel free to download the PDF document that is located in the console of this session under handouts for later reference. And that's today's webinar, but we will remain open for about 2 minutes for you to leave any remaining questions that you have at this time. And again, we'll get back to you with answers. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next one.